Welcome to your vailychat World Cup analysis for June 25th. This is a deep dive into the historic and honestly chaotic group stage wrap-up, and we're bringing it to you completely free of any betting or odds talk.
Yeah, exactly. The safety of the group stages is totally gone now. We've got a huge stack of sources today, match reports, tactical breakdowns, rule updates, and even some pretty intense environmental analysis.
Right, and the mission for today's deep dive is really to make sense of how these unseen forces are shredding the script. We've got 3 acts for you today. First, we're breaking down the unbelievable Group E and Group F drama.
Which has been wild. I mean, raw emotion is just dismantling tactical superiority right now.
It really is. And then we're going to look at the new disciplinary rules, some brutal injury blows, and those extreme physical battles that are going to define the knockouts.
Because, if you're only looking at the score lines, you are missing the mechanics of why these upsets are happening. The environment and the psychology are actively altering the game.
Absolutely. So let's just jump right into Act 1, Group E drama. Ecuador versus Germany in New Jersey. I mean, Germany walked into this tournament like a machine, right?
Oh, completely. They're riding an 11-match winning streak. They looked practically untouchable.
Right, and when the whistle blew, it took them barely 2 minutes to score. Leroy Sané sweeps in a shot from Florian Wirtz. If you're watching, you assume it's going to be an absolute bloodbath.
You do, but the mechanics behind that goal were actually incredibly controversial.
Yeah.
It totally flipped the psychology of the match.
Yeah, because right in the build-up to that goal, Germany's Alexander Pavlovich catches Ecuador's Pedro Vite right in the head with a dangerously high boot.
A blatant high boot. And the referee just lets the play run.
Seconds later, the ball's on the net. When I read the match report, I instantly thought of the recovery mechanics in a heavyweight boxing match.
Oh, that's an interesting comparison. How so?
Well, usually if a fighter takes a blatant, illegal low blow that the ref misses and they get dropped, their physical response is just to fold. The injustice just saps their will to fight.
Which is exactly what happens to like 90% of football teams. They let that perceived injustice break their tactical focus. They start arguing, they lose their shape.
And they usually concede 2 more goals.
Right, exactly. But Ecuador did the exact opposite. They took that anger and translated it into a massive tactical shift.
So what actually changed on the pitch? Because it just looked like they started running harder.
It wasn't just effort, it was compression. Adrenaline spikes your closing speed, right? So Ecuador used that surge to implement a hyper-aggressive high press.
Oh, okay.
Instead of dropping back, they stepped their defensive line up 10 yards. They started biting into tackles in the midfield, just completely ruining Germany's rhythm.
They turned a chess match into a street fight, and it worked. 7 minutes after that non-call, they equalize. Nilson Angulo drills a low shot from 20 yards out.
Such a great strike.
And then, in the 77th minute, a corner gets flicked on, and Gonzalo Plata stabs it home right in front of Manuel Neuer. Ecuador wins 2-1.
It's massive. They pull off this massive upset, snap Germany's streak, and squeeze into the last 32. Though, to be fair, we should note Germany has still officially qualified for the round of 32, despite the loss.
True. But what a way for Ecuador to advance. In tournament football, when a team weaponizes a sense of injustice, they become incredibly unpredictable.
Yeah, it's a perfect case study in causality.
And we saw another massive emotional surge in Group E with the Ivory Coast. They played Curaçao in Philadelphia and won 2-0.
Powered by Nicolas Pepe. I mean, he was phenomenal, scoring twice.
Yeah, goals in the 7th and 64th minutes. And because of that, they are making history, advancing to the World Cup knockouts for the very first time.
The psychological weight of that is just immense. 4 previous appearances, and they never escaped the group. When a team shatters the ceiling like that, they start playing with fear.
They play with a sense of destiny. But we have to talk about Curaçao, too, because their story is wild. A tiny territory of just 156,000 people. I looked this up. There were over 68,000 fans inside that stadium in Philly. Literally almost half their entire population could fit in those stands.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And yet they were incredibly competitive. Their goalkeeper, Eloy Room, put on a masterclass earlier in the group stage.
Right, against Ecuador.
Exactly. In their 0-0 draw against Ecuador, which earned them their first ever World Cup point, Room made 15 saves.
15 saves in 90 minutes. What does that actually do to a goalkeeper physiologically?
It's exhausting. A goalkeeper's movements are entirely explosive.
Nah.
It's not steady cardio, it's dead stops followed by maximum exertion.
Right, diving and leaping.
Yeah, and doing that 15 times while calculating angles through traffic places, an immense neurological load on the body. They fell short of advancing, but that defiance is staggering.
It really is. So if Act 1 was all about emotion, Act 2 is all about the knockout picture taking shape, especially in Group F.
Yes, moving from emotion to cold mathematical preservation.
Exactly. We had Japan and Sweden playing to a hard-fought 1-1 draw in Arlington, Texas, in front of 70,000 fans.
Which was enough to see both nations advance to the knockout round.
Right. Daisen Maeda put Japan ahead in the 56th minute. 6 minutes later, Sweden's Anthony Elanga equalizes. And then, well, the game just sort of stocks.
Yeah, it's a classic example of game theory on the pitch. Once that scoreline hit 1-1, they basically entered a Nash equilibrium. Neither team had any incentive to take a risk.
Because taking a risk means risking tournament death.
Precisely. If Sweden sends their fullbacks forward, they risk a counterattack. So tactical self-preservation kicks in. Center backs just passing the ball laterally, dropping deep.
It's brutally efficient.
Wow.
So Sweden tops the group, Japan finishes second, and Tunisia is mathematically eliminated.
Yeah, the bracket is really taking shape now. We're also seeing co-hosts Mexico continue their perfect run.
They are looking incredibly strong. And speaking of the bracket and co-hosts, we have to talk about Canada. It is now confirmed that Canada will be facing off against South Africa next.
Right. They advanced to the knockouts for the first time in a men's World Cup, but they lost their final group game 2-1 to Switzerland in Vancouver.
Which means they lose their home field advantage. They have to travel down to Los Angeles to face South Africa, and the players are openly struggling with this.
Yeah, the quotes from the post-match interviews were telling.
Liam Millard talked about the passion of the crowds in Toronto and Vancouver, calling it a really big advantage. And Alistair Johnston called it a letdown to know they won't play on home soil again.
Now, what's fascinating here, though, is that losing the home crowd might actually be the psychological reset Canada needs.
Wait, really?
No.
I have to push back on that. I just don't buy it. They lost 2-1. Now they pack their bags, fly down the coast, change climates, and face a South African team that just leaped over South Korea.
I hear you.
Doesn't losing the home crowd just compound their deficit? You know, you lose that energy that pushes tired legs in the 88th minute, and you lose that subconscious influence the crowd has on the ref.
Those are totally valid points. But you have to factor in the psychological burden of being a host nation. Historically, host nations often crumble under that local expectation.
I guess Brazil in 2014 comes to mind.
Exactly. Alistair Johnston even mentioned that just 4 years ago, qualifying was a pipe dream, and now this is everything they've built. That is a staggering amount of pressure.
Yeah, every misplaced pass elicits a groan from 50,000 people.
Right. It makes players tense. By relocating to LA, they shed those expectations. They go from being the hosts who must perform back to being the underdogs.
Okay, that makes sense. The physical distance acts as a psychological buffer. They can breathe again.
But they're going to need all the breath they can get because Act 3 is where things get really intense.
Yes, the tournament anomalies and injury blows. The physical toll is becoming a massive storyline. The Guardian's environmental analysis found that at least 2 matches have already been played in severe heat.
Saudi Arabia versus Uruguay in Miami and Sweden versus Tunisia in Monterrey. Both hit wet bulb temperatures of 28 degrees Celsius or 82 Fahrenheit.
Now, to you listening, 82 degrees doesn't sound apocalyptic, but a wet bulb temperature is a completely different beast. It factors in air temp, cloud cover, and humidity.
It measures the actual heat stress on the human body.
Right, so explain the mechanics of this. Why does humidity act like a physical blanket on these players?
It's pure thermodynamics. Your body cools itself by sweating, but sweat only works when it evaporates off your skin, taking the heat with it.
Okay.
When the air is incredibly humid, it's already saturated with moisture. It literally cannot absorb your sweat.
The sweat just sits there, you're just wet, but not cooling down.
Exactly. Your internal cooling engine stalls, your heart pumps aggressively to send blood to the skin, which diverts oxygen away from your muscles.
Oh, wow.
Your core temperature spikes, you get cognitive fog, which is why world-class players suddenly mistime simple tackles late in the game.
And FIFPro, the players' union, previously warned that games at a wet bulb of 28 Celsius or higher should be delayed. Yet, here we are.
FIFA has mandated cooling breaks and misting systems, but look at the competitive discrepancy it creates.
Oh, the Dallas match. Yeah, the wet bulb outside in Dallas was nearly 35 degrees Celsius, a literal furnace. But it's an enclosed dome with industrial AC.
They dropped the internal temperature to a perfect 22 Celsius, or 71 Fahrenheit.
So in the knockouts, you might have a team coming out of perfect 71-degree air conditioning playing a team whose bodies were pushed to the brink of heat exhaustion.
The recovery times just aren't comparable. It alters tactical preparation completely. If your opponent just played in severe wet bulb heat, your strategy is just to make them run until their legs give out.
It's ruthless. And speaking of things giving out, we have massive injury news. Senegal has suffered a devastating blow.
Yes, this is huge for their knockout hopes.
Star goalkeeper Edouard Mendy has been officially ruled out of their clash with Iraq due to a knee injury.
That changes their entire defensive structure. Mendy is a foundational piece for them. Losing a starting keeper to a knee injury right before the knockouts is brutal.
It really is. But the injuries and the heat aren't the only traps waiting for players. We need to dig into the new disciplinary rules MLS soccer detailed, because aggression on the pitch is spiking.
It really is. I mean, we've already seen the 8th red card of the tournament.
Which is insane. That 8th red card ties the combined total of send-offs from the entire Qatar and Russia editions put together.
That stat is unbelievable, and it's all tied to how these new rules overhaul the risk profile for players. Let's start with the yellow cards.
Right, so under the 2026 rules, yellow cards are completely reset after the group stage, and then they reset again after the quarterfinals.
It acts exactly like bankruptcy protection for aggressive teams.
I love that framing, bankruptcy protection.
Well, under the old system, a yellow card early on was a debt you carried. Defenders were hesitant to take a tactical foul.
Because one more slip-up and you miss the biggest match of your life.
Exactly. But now, heading into the round of 32, the slate is wiped clean. Teams that played incredibly physical group stage matches suddenly have their debts forgiven.
But there's a massive trapdoor here, right? Because while yellow cards give them physical freedom, the new red card offenses demand absolute behavioral discipline.
The crackdown on dissent is unprecedented.
You can now be shown a straight red card just for covering your mouth to hide what you were saying to the ref.
Which players do constantly.
Right. A player gets hacked down, their heart rate is at 180, they're furious, and they cover their mouth so cameras can't catch them swearing. No. That gets you sent off.
And you can also get a straight red for purposefully leaving the field to protest a call. Think about the psychological friction there.
It's a massive contradiction.
You're telling an athlete, tackle harder, be more aggressive because your yellow's reset, but in the exact moment your adrenaline peaks, exhibit perfect emotional control, or you're out.
It's an almost impossible cognitive switch to flip in a fraction of a second. It's no wonder we've hit 8 red cards already.
Yeah, players are struggling to adapt to it.
And before we wrap up today, there is one more area of intense friction our sources highlighted, and it's completely off the pitch. We saw a logistical clash in Seattle around the Group G match between Egypt and Iran.
Right, so local organizers in Seattle designated the game as a pride match to tie into local celebrations happening in the city.
But the moment the draw placed Egypt and Iran into that specific match, it created a massive geopolitical collision. Both nations have strict laws regarding these issues.
And both the Iranian and Egyptian football federations filed formal objections to FIFA over the branding of the event.
Now, obviously, we are just reporting on what the sources say here, not taking any sides. But it perfectly illustrates the inherent tension of a global tournament.
It really does. You're taking 48 distinct nations with vastly different laws and cultures and forcing them into localized settings that have their own deeply entrenched identities.
The logistical friction of managing that extends so far beyond anything happening with a ball.
The World Cup doesn't exist in a vacuum, you know? It reflects the complexities of the world right back at us.
Beautifully said. So what does all of this mean for you as a viewer? When you tune in to these knockout matches, you are no longer just watching a tactical game.
You're watching a multifaceted battle of attrition.
Exactly. You're watching Ecuador trying to ride historical momentum. You're watching defenders calculate bankruptcy protection on yellow cards while trying not to get red carded for covering their mouths.
And they're waging a brutal war against the thermodynamics of the climate itself.
It's the ultimate test. Listen, for live scoreboards, up-to-the-minute injury trackers, and the absolute deepest tactical analysis on the web, head over to vailychat.web.app right now.
Definitely go check it out. Read it, watch it, share it, and enjoy the games.
And hey, we will see you at Passo's Pizza in Avon. But before we go, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over.
Oh, here we go.
Think about the severe heat we discussed. A wet bulb temperature of 82 degrees stalling the human body's cooling system in Miami, while players in Dallas enjoyed perfect 71-degree AC.
Yeah.
As climate change steadily pushes summer temperatures into these unsafe, extreme wet bulb ranges across the globe, is the traditional outdoor essence of the beautiful game eventually going to become obsolete?
That is a very haunting prospect.
Are we looking at a future where, 50 years from now, every single World Cup match must be played entirely inside massive, climate-controlled biodomes just to ensure human survival? Think about that the next time you see a team step out into the blazing sun. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. Catch you next time.